Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about South Carolina and Biden and the primary and the results. What happened? Because there are a lot of surprised people right now. So, we're going to talk about the commentary and why it didn't exactly line up with what occurred. Because as soon as those results started coming out, questions started pouring in. It was all pretty much the same question. How did Biden do so well? Because all of the commentary was saying that he was going to do poorly because he was missing out on a couple of key demographics. And that certainly did not occur. Okay, so if you missed the news, don't know what happened. South Carolina, the Democratic primary went ahead, and Biden won in a landslide. We're talking like 96% of the vote. The next closest contestant was Marianne Williamson with right about 2%. Okay, so how did that happen? Because if you've been paying attention to commentary, Biden is losing key segments. There are demographics that are very upset with him, and they're not going to support him. That's not bad commentary. That's true. Just doesn't have anything to do with the primary. Think about who those demographics are. Let's start with who was making the commentary. Leftists, right? Leftists or progressives, some of which are, they're really leftists that don't want to admit it, so they call themselves progressives. That's where that commentary came from. They are upset with Biden. Yes, that's true. You have two things at play in why it didn't matter. First, South Carolina is not actually known as a bastion of leftism. There's not a whole lot of them there. There's some, but they're around the universities, and there's not many. The other thing is that, generally speaking, leftists don't get involved in the primaries. There are some organizations that are trying to change that, and I personally think they're definitely on the right track. One of the reasons leftists don't have candidates they like during the general is because they're not involved in the primary. So even though there's an attempt to alter that, as it stands right now, generally speaking, leftists are involved in the general election. And it boils down to you either get the vote or you don't. Leftists they're ideologues. They're not exactly pragmatic. So there is very much a we're with you or against you thing. Okay? But that doesn't show up in the primary. So it didn't impact those numbers at all. The other demographic, Arab Americans. Okay. Now, there's actually more in South Carolina than you might imagine, but still not enough to make a huge difference. The other thing to keep in mind is that they may not have shown up either. They may not have decided to show up and vote for a different candidate. They just didn't show up. So you just didn't have the demographics that are upset. They didn't have an impact in this primary. What it showed is that liberals, not leftists, liberals are firmly united behind Biden. That's what it shows. More so than the Republican Party is behind Trump. Trump would love to be able to pull 90% in a primary. He can't, because he's not that popular. Now, does that mean that the rest of the Democratic primaries are going to look the same way? No, I don't think so. Because I think when you get to states that are a little bit more left, California as an example, I think that the numbers will show there. Probably show around the Great Lakes as well. But at the same time, I imagine it'll still be in the 90s, just not high 90s. The other thing to keep in mind is that the people who make commentary about this, they're left. Or, they say they're progressive, but that's just to hide the fact that they're left. Don't get caught up in the fact that leftist commentary is overrepresented. When you are talking about the percentage of people within the Democratic coalition that are leftist, it's not much. It's like maybe 5%. But when you get to the commentators, it's probably 50%. So it seems like it's a bigger chunk of the Democratic Party than it is. It's worth remembering that Biden can't lose that 5%, though. He's going to need that when it comes to the general, if Haley is the Republican nominee. If Trump is the Republican nominee, I don't think that there's much that I don't think there's much Biden could do that would create a situation where he loses. Not at this point. If it's Haley or anybody else, really, Biden is going to need the 2 or 3 points from the leftists and the 2 or 3 points from the Arab Americans. Going to need that in the general. But we don't know how that's going to shape up yet. The answer to the question, why did Biden do so well? Because it was a primary of liberals. Liberals are united behind Biden. It's leftists. It's other demographics that are more progressive than liberals that have an issue. And that's where it is. The demographics that have problems with Biden, that have policy differences, or in some cases moral differences, that they're not really represented in South Carolina, so it didn't show up there. When it does show up, I don't think it's going to be dramatic, though. I think that's been overstated in the commentary. So, anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.